Tarzan, a Walt Disney classic. Deep in the jungle, a baby was crying. Not long ago, he and his parents had survived a shipwreck. They then lived safely in a treehouse until Sabor, a leopard, found them. When Sabor strode away from the house, only the baby was left alive. A gorilla named Kala heard the baby crying. A few days ago, Kala's own baby had been taken by Sabor, and she was still sad. Now another baby was in trouble, so Kala followed the sound. Kala gently lifted the baby from its cradle, and the little boy stopped crying. Kala felt her heart leap with love. Kala named the baby Tarzan, and he grew up into a happy, lively little boy. He loved hanging from vines and scaring his mother. Tarzan made many friends in the jungle, but his favorite was a young gorilla named Turk. One day, Turk dared Tarzan to go and get an elephant hair, and Tarzan said he'd do it. Tarzan didn't mean to startle the elephants, but he did, and they stampeded. The other gorillas were almost trampled by the terrified herd. When Kurlik, the gorilla leader, found out what had happened, he was furious. "Someone could have been killed because of you," he told Tarzan. "He's only a child," said Kala. "He'll learn." "He will never learn," shouted Kirk. "He will never be one of us." But Kala found Tarzan smeared mud on the face. He was trying to make himself look more like an ape. "Why am I so different?" he asked. In reply, Carla put Tarzan's hand on her chest so he could feel his heart beating. Then she pressed his ear to her heart. "See," she said, "our hearts are exactly the same." Tarzan understood as he hugged Carla and decided he would try to make Carla proud of him too. Years passed and Tarzan grew strong. He learned to survive in the jungle. One day, Turk and Tarzan were wrestling playfully near the gorilla's nest when suddenly Sabor leapt out. Kerchak grabbed the leopard. As they struggled, Sabor wounded Kerchak with his razor-sharp claws, then moved in for the kill. Swinging from the vine, Tarzan kicked Sabor and threw her off balance. Tarzan lured Sabor away from the wounded Kerchak into some bushes. The gorillas held their breath until Tarzan emerged, holding Sabor's body above him. A moment later, a loud bang sent everyone rushing for cover. But Tarzan was curious and went to investigate. Hiding in the bushes, Tarzan saw three strange creatures approaching. They were humans, and one was carrying a rifle. One of the humans, a young woman, began to draw a baby baboon. But the little baboon became upset, and all the other baboons attacked the woman. Tarzan came to rescue her. When the baboons had gone, Tarzan took the woman's hand and held it against his. They were alike. He gazed into her eyes. Could it be? Was she a creature like him? "Tarzan," he said, pointing to himself. "Jane," she said, pointing at herself. Jane and her father, Professor Porter, had come from England to study gorillas. Their guide, a hunter called Clayton, was the one who had fired the shot. Jane eagerly told them both about Tarzan, the amazing ape man who had saved her from the baboons. Meanwhile, Tarzan had rejoined his family. Kerchak ordered everyone to stay away from the strangers. They meant us no harm, Tarzan protested. I don't know that, Kerchak replied. Protect your family and stay away from them, he told Tarzan. Why don't you tell me there were creatures like me? Tarzan asked Kala. The next day, Tarzan found his way to the humans' camp. Jane happily showed him pictures of the outside world and began teaching him English. Tarzan learned quickly. Tarzan showed Jane his world too. The leafy jungle plants and the beautiful brightly colored birds. Professor Porter could see that the special friendship was forming between Tarzan and his daughter. The professor himself was eager to learn all that he could from Tarzan, but Clayton wanted Tarzan to lead them to the gorillas. At first, Tarzan refused. He knew Kerchak would be angry. All too soon, Jane and Tarzan, that she had her father, were preparing to go home. Please come with us, she said. Jane must stay with Tarzan, he told her. Fighting back tears, Jane said that she couldn't. Only one thing can keep her here. Clayton told Tarzan if she could see the gorillas. Desperate not to lose Jane, Tarzan led the humans to the gorillas. The porters were enchanted. As Jane played with some babies, Clayton made a map showing the gorillas' location. Then, when Kerchak saw the humans, he charged towards Clayton. Go! Tarzan shouted to the humans as he held Kerchak back. When the humans had gone, Kerchak gazed at Tarzan. I'm sorry, said Tarzan. Kala knew it was time to show Tarzan the tree house. I should have done this long ago, she said. There he found a picture of himself as a baby with his human parents. Now you know, Tarzan, said Kala, as she left him alone. Moments later, Tarzan appeared dressed in his father's clothes. He had decided to go with porters and live in the human world. No matter where I go, you will always be my mother, he told Kala. And you will always be in my heart, Kala said tenderly. The following morning, Turk and her friends Tantor watched sadly from the edge of the jungle as Tarzan, Clayton, and Porter rowed out their ships. Tarzan followed the porters aboard, only to find that the deck was filled with cages, and Clayton's orders, some rough-looking men grabbed the three of them and began forcing them below deck. Clayton, cried Tarzan, help! These cages are for your furry friends, he sneered. I'm going to sell them for 300 pounds each, and I couldn't have done it without you. Lock them all up, he told his men. Realizing what he had done, Tarzan let out a cry of despair. Turk and Tantor heard it and headed straight for the ship. Meanwhile, Clayton and his men made their way to the gorilla's home and started to capture the apes. Suddenly, Tarzan yell pierced the air. He He arrived with an army of animals, including Tantor carrying Turk and the porters on his back. They quickly freed the gorillas. Angrily, Clayton fired at Tarzan, wounding him. As Clayton raised his rifle again, Kerchak charged and took the bullet meant for Tarzan. Clayton chased Tarzan up into the trees. Tarzan grabbed Clayton's rifle and broke it against the branch. Clayton hit out wildly with his knife, but he fell from the tree. He would never trouble the gorillas again. Tarzan ran to Kerchak. "Forgive me," Tarzan begged. "No," gasped Kerchak, "you forgive me for not understanding that you have always been one of us. Take care of your family, my son." The next morning, Tarzan and Jane stood on the beach, saying goodbye. "I will miss you, Jane," said Tarzan softly. He took her hand and held her against him, just as he had done when they first met. Weeping, Jane broke away and ran to the boat where her father was waiting. "You should stay, dear," said Professor Porter to Jane. "You love him." Jane knew that her father was right. She jumped out of the boat and ran into Tarzan's arms. All the gorillas cheered and welcomed Jane's return. Then Professor Porter decided to stay too. Tarzan was with the family he loved in the jungle home. Now, with Jane by his side, he knew that he would always be where he belongs.